My mother, Evelyn, looked me straight in the eye and called my son and me parasites. She said we were leeching off her good graces, just like we always had. But the thing is, she said it in a text message, sent from 1,000 miles away. A text message meant for an 8-year-old boy celebrating his elementary school graduation. I'm telling you this right now, right at the top, because I want to know if you get it. If you've ever felt like you've built a life, brick by brick, only to have someone you love try to burn it down with a single word. If that sounds familiar, if you know what it feels like to be betrayed by your own blood, then this story is for you. This is a safe place to be seen. And if you're with me on this, hit that subscribe button. It's not just a click. It's a signal to the world that you're done letting other people define your worth. And if you're ready to reclaim your narrative, just drop "I'm with you" in the comments. It's time we all stop feeling like parasites in our own lives. You need to understand, this wasn't some random Tuesday. This was a day that was supposed to be a win, a victory lap. The sun was out, painting the sky with a kind of brilliant blue that only happens in early summer, the kind of day that feels like a promise. My son, Finn, stood on a little wooden stage in the school auditorium, his oversized cap just barely staying on his head. He was so proud. So was I. He had spent the whole week practicing his walk, his handshake, his little wave to the crowd. He was a kid who had worked hard, and he deserved to feel every ounce of that joy. He kept looking out into the audience, searching, not for me. He knew I was there, sitting in the 4th row, a camera glued to my face. He was looking for my parents, his grandparents, Evelyn and Arthur. They told us they were flying in, that they wouldn't miss it for the world. We'd been excited for weeks. Finn had even made them little macaroni necklaces in art class. He was a boy who loved his grandparents, even if he only saw them twice a year. During a break between speeches, Finn's little face lit up. He saw me, and he waved, a tiny, hopeful gesture that sliced right through the noise of the room. I smiled back and held up my phone, as if to say, "Hey, you did it." But then I saw a message notification. I clicked it, expecting a quick photo from a friend or a work email. Instead, it was my mother. The subject line was blank. The body of the text was a short, sharp line of text. "Don't look for us. We're not coming. He should know by now that we don't waste money on things that don't matter. We're not paying for a plane ticket so we can sit through a 3rd-grade ceremony for a kid who's just going to be another parasite in your house. The house we paid for." I felt the air get thin. The world around me faded to static. The sound of the principal's voice a distant hum. All I could focus on was that word. That single ugly word, floating in the center of the screen like a cruel joke. Parasite. It was a word that had been thrown at me my entire life. But to see it directed at my son, a child full of light and innocence, felt different. It was a new kind of cold, a new kind of low. My hand tightened around my phone until I thought it might crack. I wanted to scream. I wanted to walk right out of that auditorium and call her, demand an explanation, demand an apology. But then I looked up. I saw my son, still smiling, still looking out for a sign from the people who had just called him nothing. I couldn't shatter his moment. Not for her. Not for them. So I took a deep breath, pasted a huge, fake smile on my face, and waved back. He waved back, and for a second, I pretended everything was okay, but I knew better. I knew the war that had been simmering beneath the surface of my life was about to boil over. And this time, I wasn't going to let them win. My mom's text hit me like a physical blow. The kind of blow that doesn't leave a mark, but stings you from the inside out. I looked down at my phone again, at her words, and my mind started racing. It wasn't just a text. It was a pattern, A cruel, decades-long pattern that started so long ago. I can barely remember a time before it. You see, to understand why her words cut so deep, you have to understand where I came from. I grew up in a house that always felt like it belonged to someone else. My father, Arthur, was a brilliant man, but he was also a ghost. He was an artist, and a good one, but he was in a constant state of a midlife crisis, forever chasing a breakthrough that never came. He spent his days in his studio, painting things no one ever bought, and his nights in a bar, drinking away the money he never made. My mother, Evelyn, was the opposite. She was the one who was always in charge, always on the move, always with a new plan to get us rich quick. She was the one who held us all together. Or so she said. But the truth is, she was the one who held us hostage. I was the youngest of two, and that automatically made me the odd one out. My brother, Daniel, was the golden child, the heir to the family's non-existent artistic legacy. Daniel was the one who was supposed to be the next big thing, the one who was going to make us all rich and famous. He was the one who got to go to art camp every summer while I stayed home and worked in the yard. He was the one who got to go to private school while I went to public. He was the one who got to have a car when he turned 16 while I had to take the bus. He was the one who got to live his life while I lived in his shadow. My parents were so busy building Daniel up, they didn't notice me. Or maybe they did and they just didn't care. I was the one who mowed the lawn, washed the dishes, and did the laundry. I was the one who got a job at 15, scrubbing floors in a local diner to buy my own clothes. I was the one who went to college on a full scholarship because I couldn't afford to go otherwise. I was the one who was supposed to be the sensible one, the responsible one, the one who would always be there to clean up the mess when things went wrong. I don't remember a time when I wasn't told that my only purpose was to serve my family, to make sure they were taken care of. I remember one Christmas. I bought my mom a nice sweater with my own money. She looked at it, then at me and said, "This is nice, but it's not what I wanted. I wanted a new car." I remember thinking, how could you say that? But I didn't say anything. I just nodded and went back to the kitchen to do the dishes. My parents, especially my mother, always saw me as an extension of them, a tool to be used and discarded when they were done. I was never a son. I was a resource. I was the one who was supposed to get a good job, make a lot of money, and then hand it all over to them so they could continue to live their lives of artistic freedom. I was the one who was supposed to be their safety net, their backup plan, their retirement fund. The sad thing is, I believed it. For a long time, I believed that my only purpose was to take care of them. I believed that I was responsible for their happiness, their success, their failures. I believed that I was the reason they were struggling, that I wasn't doing enough. I believed that I was a burden, a weight around their necks. I believed that I was a failure. I didn't realize it then, but I was living in a cage built by my parents' expectations and my brother's artistic ambitions. A cage that was so well disguised, I didn't even know it was there. I just thought it was normal. I thought that's what family was supposed to be like. I thought that's what love was supposed to be like. But it wasn't. It wasn't love. It was a transaction. And I was the one who was always on the losing end. My parents' house was a museum of unfulfilled promises. The walls were lined with my father's unsold paintings. The shelves were filled with my mother's unfinished sculptures. The living room was a monument to all the things they were going to do one day. All the things they were going to be one day. All the things they were going to achieve one day. But they never did. And they never would. Because they were too busy living in their own little world of artistic genius to notice that the real world was passing them by. I was the only one who saw it. the only one who knew the truth. But I couldn't say anything, because if I did, I would be betraying them. I would be hurting them. I would be a bad son. And I didn't want to be a bad son. I wanted to be a good son. I wanted to be the son they were proud of. I wanted to be the son they loved. But they never loved me, not in the way a parent is supposed to love a child. They loved what I could do for them. And that, I would soon learn, was the biggest lie of all. After graduation, I swore I'd never go back to that house. I went to college on a full scholarship and put as much distance between myself and my family as I possibly could. But a cage is a cage, and the bars were still there, just a little further apart. I worked 3 jobs to pay for my living expenses and send money home. I lived on instant noodles and stale bread and wore the same 3 shirts for 4 years. My parents never asked how I was doing. They just asked when I was coming home. And when I did, it was always for an occasion for them. Of course, for my brother Daniel, the golden child. My life was an endless series of sacrifices, all of which were ignored, or worse, expected. I remember one time, I was supposed to have a big final exam, a final that would determine if I graduated with honors. I was up all night studying, running on coffee and the sheer will to escape the life they had planned for me. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen missed calls from my mom. I called her back, my heart pounding in my chest. She was crying. Hysterically, she told me Daniel had been in a minor car accident, a fender bender, and that he was in shock. She told me she needed me to come home. Right now. I told her I couldn't, that I had a final. She started screaming. "Your brother is hurt. Do you have no compassion? What's more important, a final or your family?" I knew it was a lie. I knew she was just trying to manipulate me, but I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk the guilt trip, the endless phone calls, the silent treatment that would follow. So I got on the first bus I could find and went home. When I got there, I found Daniel sitting on the couch, laughing with my dad, a beer in his hand, a small scratch on his forehead. "Hey, little bro," he said. "What are you doing here? I thought you had a final." My mom just looked at me and smiled. "He's just so dramatic," she said. "Always has been." I went back to school that night and took the final. I passed, but I didn't get the honors I'd been working so hard for. I didn't say anything to them. I just went back to my life, to my 3 jobs, to my instant noodles. Because what was the point? They would never understand. They would never care. My life, my happiness, my dreams, they were all secondary to Daniel's, to their perfect little golden boy. My parents were so caught up in their own little world of artistic genius that they never stopped to ask what I wanted, what I needed. I wanted a family. I wanted a mother who would call me just to say she loved me. I wanted a father who would be proud of me. I wanted a brother who would be my friend. But all I got was a lifetime of unfulfilled promises and a heart full of resentment. And then I met Sarah. She was a whirlwind, a storm of laughter and light that blew into my life and changed everything. She saw me for who I was, not for what I could do for other people. She saw my heart, my dreams, my struggles. She made me feel seen. She made me feel loved. We got married and had our beautiful son, Finn. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly happy, truly whole. I thought I had escaped. I thought I had finally broken free from the cage they had built for me. I was a man now, a husband, a father. I had my own family, my own life, my own rules. But I didn't realize that they were still there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, the moment to remind me that I was still theirs, that I was still a tool to be used, and that my new family was just collateral damage. I didn't realize that the storm was coming. I didn't realize that the worst was yet to come. I didn't realize that the sacrifices I had made, the emotional and financial debt I had taken on, would be used as a weapon against me. I didn't realize that my own mother would one day use those very sacrifices to justify a new, even more brutal betrayal. The final betrayal that would change everything. The one that would lead me to a choice no son should ever have to make. It's crazy how life has a way of lulling you into a false sense of security right before it drops a bomb on you. I had a beautiful wife, a wonderful son, and a career I was proud of. I thought I'd finally done it. I thought I had built a life so strong, so stable, that no one, not even my parents, could tear it down. I was wrong. The breaking point didn't come with a shout or a fight. It came with a phone call. It was a Tuesday night. Sarah was driving home from her weekly pottery class, and I was in the living room, helping Finn with his homework. We were working on a project about the solar system. I remember him asking me if there was a planet made entirely of candy. We were laughing. It was a normal, beautiful moment. My phone rang. It was the hospital. The voice on the other end was calm, but the words were a tidal wave. "We have a patient, Sarah Miller. She's been in a car accident." My heart stopped. The world went silent. The laughter in the room vanished. I dropped the phone. It was like I was in a movie, watching my life fall apart in slow motion. I felt my legs give out. Finn looked at me, his little face full of confusion. "Daddy? What's wrong?" I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was stare at the phone on the floor. I got to the hospital and found Sarah in a bed, hooked up to a machine that was breathing for her. A doctor told me she was in a coma. They didn't know if she would wake up. I sat by her side for hours, holding her hand, praying to a God I wasn't sure existed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash something, but all I could do was sit there, in the cold, sterile room, and watch the love of my life fight for her life. My mind went back to my family. I had to tell them. I had to. They were her family, too. I called my mom. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "Liam, what's up? We're just heading out for Daniel's gallery opening. His big break, you know? He's finally made it." I took a deep breath. "Mom," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "It's Sarah. She's been in an accident." There was a long pause. I could hear Daniel in the background, laughing. My mom's voice changed, just for a second. It got tight. "Oh, well, that's a shame. We're so sorry to hear that. But we can't really do anything, can we? We've got a huge night ahead of us. Daniel needs us. We'll be there for him. He's counting on us. You understand, right?" My throat closed up. The gall, the sheer unadulterated coldness. It was like they were talking about a stranger. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking. "She's in a coma. I'm at the hospital. I need you here." "Liam, don't be so dramatic. You're always so dramatic. Just call us when you have more news. We'll pray for her." And with that, she hung up. I stood there in the hospital hallway, my phone still in my hand, staring at the blank screen. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. It wasn't just that they didn't care. It was that they didn't even pretend to care. They didn't even pretend to be sorry. They just hung up. They just went on with their lives. They just went to my brother's party. Because to them, that was more important than their daughter-in-law's life. More important than my pain. More important than my family. I went back into Sarah's room and sat down. I looked at her. So pale. So still. So beautiful. The love of my life. The mother of my son. the woman who had given me a reason to live, and I realized that I had been so busy trying to please my parents that I had forgotten to protect the people who really mattered. I didn't say anything to Finn. I just told him his mom was sick and that she needed to get better. He was just a little boy. He didn't understand. He didn't know that my parents had just abandoned us. He didn't know that they had chosen a party over his mom's life. He didn't know that they were monsters. I wish I could say I did. But I didn't. Not really. Not until that night. Not until I was alone in that cold, sterile room, holding the hand of the woman I loved more than life itself, and realized that my family was not just toxic. They were a liability, and they were about to destroy everything I'd worked so hard to build. After she hung up, the silence in that hospital hallway was heavier than any sound could have been. It wasn't just the silence of a phone line cutting out. It was the silence of a heart that had finally been broken. I stood there, for God knows how long, staring at the phone, at the last word my mother had said to me, "Pray." The irony was a gut punch. They could spare a thought, a prayer, for a woman they'd just abandoned. But they couldn't spare a single minute of their night. The next few days were a blur. I lived on coffee and the cold, sanitized air of the hospital room. I'd sit by Sarah's side, holding her hand, willing her to squeeze back. I'd talk to her, telling her about our day, about Finn's homework, about the silly things I'd seen on TV. I'd whisper to her how much I loved her, how much Finn loved her, how much we needed her to come back to us. I'd close my eyes and try to remember her laugh, the way her whole face would light up when she was happy. But it was getting harder to remember. The grief was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it impossible to breathe. I was living in a fog. The days bled into nights, the hospital walls becoming my entire world. The doctors would come in, their voices a muffled drone, their words a string of medical jargon I couldn't understand. All I knew was that Sarah wasn't getting better. She was fading, and there was nothing I could do about it. The helplessness was a slow-motion kind of torture. I tried to keep it together for Finn. I'd go home for a few hours to be with him, to help him with his homework, to read him a bedtime story. But he knew something was wrong. He'd look at me with those big, innocent eyes and ask, "Daddy, is Mommy coming home soon?" And I'd have to lie. I'd have to force a smile and say, "Of course, buddy. She's just resting." The lies tasted like ash on my tongue. But what else could I do? He was just a kid. He didn't deserve to know the truth. He didn't deserve to know that his mom was dying. He didn't deserve to know that his grandparents had abandoned us. He didn't deserve to know that his family was a lie. Then came the day the doctors told me there was nothing more they could do. I sat there, in a small, windowless room, and listened to them tell me that Sarah's injuries were too severe. They told me that she would never wake up. They told me that the only thing they could do now was to make her comfortable. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't do anything. I just sat there, my mind blank, my heart shattered. When I finally got back to her room, I sat down and held her hand one last time. I told her that I loved her, that I would never forget her, that I would take care of our son. And then I let go. The world went silent. My world went dark. The funeral was a blur of black suits and sad faces. Friends and neighbors came, their voices a chorus of condolences. But my parents weren't there. My brother wasn't there. They sent a card with a small, handwritten note from my mother. "We're so sorry for your loss. We'll pray for you and Finn." It was a final slap in the face. They could send a card, but they couldn't be there. They could send their thoughts, but they couldn't be a family. I was a ghost in my own house. The silence was deafening. Every corner held a memory of her. Her favorite chair, her books on the nightstand, her coffee cup still in the cupboard. It was all too much. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, staring at the walls. A hollow man in a hollow house. I was so consumed by my grief that I didn't even notice the stack of bills on the kitchen counter. Until the collection agency called. The woman on the phone was polite but firm. She was calling about Sarah's hospital bill. She told me that the claim had been denied. I was confused. Sarah had a great health insurance plan through her job. It was a platinum-level plan, a plan we'd been paying for years. It was a plan that was supposed to protect us. The woman on the phone told me that the policy had been drained, that a large portion of the coverage had been cashed out months ago. She told me that there was no money left. I hung up. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I couldn't breathe. I grabbed the phone and called the insurance company. I was on the phone for hours, bouncing from department to department, my voice getting more frantic with every transfer. Finally, I got to a supervisor. I told him everything. He put me on hold. A few minutes later, he came back on the line. He told me that he had found the claim. He told me that the money had been paid out to a third party. He told me that the policyholder had authorized the payment. I asked him who the policyholder was. He told me it was my wife, but that couldn't be right. Sarah would never do that. She would never take money from our savings. Not for herself. Not for anyone. And then he said something that made my blood run cold. He told me that the money had been used to pay for a large-scale art project, a project that was supposed to launch an artist's career. He told me that the artist was my brother, Daniel, and that the money had been authorized by my mother, Evelyn. The world went silent again. The rage, the grief, the pain, it all came rushing back. But this time, it was different. This time, it was colder. This time, it was a slow burn. My parents hadn't just abandoned me. They had stolen from me. They had stolen from my wife. They had stolen from my son. They had stolen our future. The words my mother had said to me came back to me. The words about being a parasite, about leeching off her, the house they claimed they had paid for. It was all a lie. It was all a scam. They had been draining us dry for years, taking from us, stealing from us, all while pretending to be our family. And now, they had taken the one thing I couldn't get back. They had taken my wife's life. They had taken her chance at life. They had taken our chance at a future. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't do anything. I just sat there, my mind blank, my heart shattered. And then, a new kind of calm washed over me. A cold, hard, unyielding calm. I was no longer a victim. I was no longer a grieving husband. I was a man on a mission, a man with nothing left to lose. I was going to find a way to make them pay. I was going to make them feel every ounce of pain they had put me through. I was going to make them feel what it was like to be a parasite. I was going to make them wish they had never called me one. I spent the next few weeks as a different man. The grief was still there, a constant, dull ache in my chest. But now it was a silent engine, a fuel for the rage that was building inside me. I was no longer a victim. I was a man on a mission, a man with nothing left to lose. My days were a blur of meetings with lawyers, pulling bank statements, and tracking down insurance documents. The rage, so cold and methodical, had given me a focus I'd never had before. It had transformed me. It had turned my heartbreak into a weapon. And I was about to use it. The date of the confrontation was already set. It was a day that was supposed to be a triumph. Daniel's big gallery opening, the culmination of his artistic genius, the grand unveiling of the work that my wife's insurance money had paid for, the same opening my parents had chosen over her life. The irony was a bitter pill I was more than happy to swallow. I got a text from my mother a few hours before the event. The same bright, cheerful tone she always used. "Just so excited. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. We're so proud of Daniel." I didn't reply. I just stared at the text and smiled. I had dressed in a dark suit, a suit I'd only ever worn to formal events, to funerals. It felt fitting. I wasn't going to a party. I was going to a burial. The burial of the lie that was my family. When I arrived at the gallery, the place was packed. The air was thick with the scent of cheap wine and expensive perfume. The walls were lined with Daniel's canvases, bright, loud, and utterly without soul. A crowd of people milled around, their voices a polite hum of admiration. It was a triumph, a manufactured triumph, a triumph built on a lie. I found my parents by the entrance, their faces alight with pride, a glass of champagne in each of their hands. They were the picture of success, the proud parents of a brilliant artist. They didn't see me at first. They were too busy basking in the glow of the attention. I walked over to them, my heart pounding in my chest, but my face was a mask of calm. "Liam, look at you," my mother said, her voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful. "We were just talking about you. We were saying how proud we were of you, for getting through, you know." She trailed off, a forced sympathetic look on her face. I didn't react. I just smiled. "Yes," I said, my voice low and steady. "I got through it, with a little help from my friends, and without any help from my family. My father, Arthur, shifted uncomfortably. Now, son, that's not fair. You know we were there for you in spirit." "In spirit?" I said, and the smile on my face widened. "Just a little. Is that what you call it? When you cash out your daughter-in-law's life insurance policy to pay for a gallery opening, is that what you call it when you choose a party over her life? Is that what you call it when you lie to my face and call me a parasite?" The crowd around us started to fall silent. People were turning, their heads swiveling, their eyes wide. My mother's face, which had been so full of light just moments before, went blank. She looked at me, and I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice thin and reedy. "You're being dramatic. You've always been so dramatic." "Am I?" I said, and I pulled out my phone. I had every document on it. The insurance statements, the wire transfers, the forged signatures. "Do you want to see the proof? Do you want to see the trail of lies that led you to steal from a dying woman?" Arthur stepped forward. "Liam, we can discuss this later. Not here. Not now. You're making a scene." But I wasn't making a scene. I was exposing one. "I'm not making a scene," I said, and my voice was a low growl. "You made a scene when you stole from my wife. You made a scene when you abandoned me. You made a scene when you called my son a parasite. This," I said, gesturing to the crowd that was now staring at us, "is just a consequence." It was then that Daniel appeared. He'd heard the commotion and was pushing his way through the crowd, his face a mix of confusion and anger. "What's going on?" he said, his voice a whisper. "Liam, what are you doing?" I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see the golden child. I just saw a man who had been used, just like me. "I'm telling the truth," I said, "the truth about where the money for this gallery came from. It came from Sarah's life insurance. Your parents took it. They took it all. They stole it from her. They stole it from me. They stole it from Finn." Daniel's face went pale. He looked at my parents, then at me, then back at his parents. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The lies he'd been living, the triumphs he'd been celebrating, they were all built on a foundation of betrayal. "Is that true?" he said, his voice barely a whisper. Did you do that?" My mother's face twisted. She looked at Daniel, and for a second, I thought I saw a flicker of regret, but it was gone just as quickly. "He's lying," she said. "He's just trying to ruin this for you. He's always been jealous of you. He's always been a parasite." But it was too late. The truth was out. The crowd was buzzing. The whispers had turned to shouts. Daniel looked at me, his eyes full of a pain I understood all too well. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He just turned and walked away. I looked at my parents, and for the first time, I saw them for who they really were. Not as my family, not as my mother and father, but as two old, sad, empty people who had built a life on lies and betrayal. I didn't feel rage anymore. I didn't feel pain. I just felt nothing. I turned and walked away, leaving them standing there, alone in the crowd. Their triumph turned to ashes. My job here was done. I walked out of that gallery and into the night air, and it was the first time I had felt like I could truly breathe in months. The chaos and the lies were still there, buzzing behind me, but they weren't on my back anymore. The weight I'd been carrying my entire life had finally been lifted. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel victory. I just felt quiet. The silence was deafening, but it was a good silence. A clean silence. The silence of a storm that had finally passed. The next few months were a blur of lawyers, documents, and uncomfortable conversations. My parents tried to deny everything, to call me a liar, to threaten me with legal action. But I was prepared. I had all the receipts, all the paperwork, all the proof. They were exposed, and they knew it. The legal battle was short and one-sided. The forged documents, the wired funds, the stolen insurance money. It was all there, in black and white. They had nothing to say, no excuses left to make. They had lost, not just the battle, but the war. I started a new project, a project that was more than just a building. I bought a piece of land on a quiet hill overlooking the city, a blank canvas, a place where Finn and I could start over, a place where we could build a home that was truly ours. From the ground up, brick by brick. I drew the plans myself. The house was a monument to our new life. The lines were clean. The windows were big, letting in all the light. There were no hidden corners, no dark rooms. It was a house built on honesty and truth. It was a house built on love. Finn helped me. He would come to the site after school, his little boots covered in mud, and he would watch me work. He would hand me tools, his little face serious and determined. We weren't just building a house. We were building a future. We were building a family of two. And it was enough. It was more than enough. My parents were silent. I didn't hear from them. I didn't seek them out. The past was the past. It was a chapter that had been closed, a book that had been finished. I had no desire to reread it. I was done with them. But the past, as I would soon learn, wasn't done with me. A few months into the build, I got a package in the mail. It was a thick, handwritten letter from my brother, Daniel. My first instinct was to throw it away, but something stopped me. A small, quiet voice inside me told me to read it, to face it. So I did. The letter was long. It was full of shame and regret. He told me that he had been a coward, that he had known what our parents were doing, that he had known about the money, that he had known about the lies. But he had been too afraid to say anything. He had been too afraid to stand up to them. He had been so used to being the golden child that he couldn't see the cage they had put me in. He apologized, not for what he had done, but for what he hadn't. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just asked me to understand. He didn't ask me to come back. He just asked me to know that he was sorry. I read the letter and I didn't feel anything. No anger, no rage, no pain. Just a quiet sadness. For him. For the boy who had been so lost in his parents' lies that he couldn't see the truth. I didn't reply to the letter. I didn't call him. I just put it in a box, not as a reminder of his betrayal, but as a reminder that people can change, that there is always hope, even for the most lost of souls. Now, a year later, the house is finished. It's not just a house. It's a home, a sanctuary, a place where Finn can run and play and laugh without a care in the world, a place where he is safe, a place where he is loved, a place where he is home. I look at him sometimes, his little face full of light, and I know that everything I went through, everything I fought for, was worth it. Every sacrifice, every struggle, every single tear. My parents are still out there, living their lives, but they are not a part of my story anymore. They are not a part of my life. My family is not a given. It is a choice. It is Finn. It is my friends. It is the community that has supported me. It is the people who have shown me what love really is. It is the people who have shown me that I am not a parasite, that I am a good man, a good father, a good person, and that, I have learned, is all that matters. I know there are so many of you out there who get it, who have had to fight to be seen, who have had to fight to be heard, who have had to build a life on your own, brick by brick. You've had to say goodbye to the family you were born into, and hello to the family you chose. If this story resonated with you, if you have a story of your own, if you want to share your struggles, your victories, your truth, then let me know in the comments below. Let's build a community where our stories can be told without fear of judgment, where we can all find the courage to stand up for ourselves. So, if you're ready to reclaim your narrative, to stop feeling like a victim and to start living a life of triumph, then I want you to hit that subscribe button. It's not just a click, it's a promise. A promise to yourself that you are no longer a victim of your past. A promise that you are the author of your own story. A promise that you will never let anyone call you a parasite again. If you're with me, drop "I'm with you" in the comments, and let's start building a new chapter together.